Hello people, today I'm going to be doing a ranking of all 27 Marvel properties. This video is a challenge to make, I'll admit that. That's why I'm not doing it for every single movie now. With, shows rolling off the back, and now we just had a movie, I have not ranked Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Black Widow, or Loki yet. So this is all going to be introduced in this one video, and don't expect one when it comes to Shang-Chi. I don't think I'll probably be doing another ranking until No Way Home is out. So yeah, let's just get right into this. I am sitting for this video because the AC in my house is not working right now. I have my fan on full blast. I'm still really warm, and so might as well sit and just do it from there. So yeah, coming in at number 27 is The Incredible Hulk. I've expressed this movie many times. I just don't like it. I tried to rewatch some of the lower tier Marvel movies for this list specifically, and I told myself, I'm just gonna try to have fun with this movie. I really tried to have fun with it, and sadly, I don't think it's a good movie. I don't think it can be enjoyed. I don't enjoy it at all. Hulk looks like a CGI mess. He looks like a comic book cutscene. I don't like Edward Norton as Hulk. I really don't. I know there's people who do. There's a love interest in this movie I just don't care about. It's really cheesy. Abomination's thrown in there last second. It takes place at night, so there's some cool action. That scene where he's busting out of the glass window, that's pretty cool. That's probably the highlight of the movie. But besides that, it's I just don't like it. I think it's paced terribly. The last scene of the movie completely slaps the Hulk character in the face, particularly the character development that they try to do with Bruce throughout the whole entire movie. It just slaps it in the face like, haha, we don't like that character development. So I think the movie's a mess, and I just don't like it. 26, Captain America: The First Avenger. I have this movie particularly low on this list, but it's simply because it's just another one I really don't enjoy. I enjoyed the first 20 minutes and the last 10 minutes. And that's about it. When it comes to the story of this film, I know they have a cool concept. I like the idea of Red Skull. I like the idea of bringing Captain America into World War II, but even though they breeze through a montage on World War II, which is fairly frustrating. But yeah, this movie I just don't really care about. I really don't care what happened in this movie. Red Skull is another villain I just simply didn't care about. Peggy Carter, she had a solid enough intro to at least make me care a little bit about her. Steve, he's so unrealistically brave to the point where I just didn't like his character. And of course, when they make him a super soldier, it's too phony with his character at moments. And of course, I'm not saying every single character has to be an Iron Man. It's just it never once focuses on a weak point for his character. There's nothing really for him to overcome except for physical or people telling him that he can't do something, and his solutions to do it. So that's why it's emotionally distant, and Captain Marvel has the same problem as this. Captain Marvel and Captain America, the First Avenger, both have the same problem. It's just people focus on Captain Marvel a lot more because I don't know. But Captain America is extremely underwritten, and Chris Evans tries, and I think he did a good enough job to at least make a lasting impression for Steve Rogers, at least. It's just I didn't care for the character. Coming in at number 25 is Iron Man 2. This is probably the most enjoyable bad movie of the MCU. It's a jumbled mess. It really is. The third act has a lot of great and fun action, and I do enjoy that third act quite a bit. It's just everything before that. It's just the movie has an identity crisis. You don't know what to take away from it. There's so many storylines going on at the same time. Like Tony Stark with his dad, Tony Stark's drinking, Tony Stark's SHIELD, the two villains, Tony Stark's health. It's like, whoa. What am I supposed to get away from this movie? And what do I get away with this movie is I like Sam Rockwell quite a bit in this movie, and that's the best thing I could say about it. Well, also the action is great. Coming in at number 24 is Thor: The Dark World. This movie is a movie where I can sit down, watch it, and enjoy it, and the next Marvel movie. It's a bingeable Marvel movie, but would I ever put this on just because? Not really. It's good background, I'll say that for sure, and I don't think this movie is as bad as some people say it is. It's nothing particularly memorable, nothing really that you can really enjoy in this movie, besides, Chris Hemsworth and some of the great action in there. Malekith is one of the blandest Marvel villains in existence. Of course, some of the designs and their weapons are pretty cool, and there's some really fun action here. It's just, it doesn't leave a lasting enough impression to really, for me to care about, to rewatch this again like the other MCU movies do. Coming in at number 23 is Ant-Man and the Wasp. I'm going to be completely honest, the first time I watched this movie, I hated it. And after a couple rewatches, I've come to enjoy it a lot more, but it's still a lower tier Marvel movie for me. It's mostly because I was expecting another first Ant-Man, but this movie went a very child-friendly approach to it. And coming off of Infinity War, people were saying, I remember when the movie first came out, people were saying, oh, it complements Infinity War nicely because that movie's so dark and this one's so upbeat. And I don't think it's a good excuse to use another movie to praise another. It doesn't, that doesn't make any sense to me. But once I realized what this movie is, what it's trying to me, I just realized it's fine. It's not a MCU movie for me. It's not one I would watch by myself. But if I were with someone who really wanted to watch this and loved it, I could sit down and watch it. It's a decent Marvel movie, but yet there's nothing particularly terrible about it. It has all the basic Marvel problems. The terrible villain. I did not like Ghost. Lawrence Fishburne is just kind of there. And I thought particularly Hank and Hope were pretty annoying. And yeah, Michelle's Pfeiffer characters was kind of in there, and kind of there's some, that whole hands thing on the face at the end, and that's laughable. But besides that, Ant-Man and the Wasp it's okay. Like, I would never watch it by myself. Yeah. Coming in at number 22 is Captain Marvel. A lot like Captain America, the First Avenger, the main character is severely underwritten to the point where you really don't care about them. There's a lot of cool ideas and themes that this movie presents, and on some of them, I think they execute the ideas and themes really well, and some others not so many. I don't think the movie is really preachy at all, like some people try to say it is. The Skrulls are a cool addition. Van Mendelsohn is great as Talos, and Brie Larson, I think, does a good job for what she's given. It's just her character is so lazily written and cliche written, almost like why I did not like Cap in Captain America the First Avenger. Given terrible material, the actor tried their best to elevate it, but didn't. Of course, Captain Marvel, like I said, the things what really hold up this movie for me is the messages, the themes, and the way they try to execute that, and I like what they do with the Skrulls. Of course, I still think to this day what they did with Nick Fury and the cat with the eye patch is almost unforgivable. I absolutely hate what they did with that. But is this one I would watch by myself? Yes, if I wanted to watch this movie, I would watch this one by myself. It's a decent enough Marvel movie without its big problems. It's one of those movies where I could do chores around my room while I have it on in the background. When I sit down and watch it, like some of the other Marvel movies, no. So yeah, coming in at number 21 is a movie that might shock some of you, but over time I've really come to sour this movie a lot, and that is Spider-Man Far From Home. It's a very entertaining movie. I've noticed that. When it comes to strict entertainment, this is probably in the upper 15, but when you think about the movie afterwards, there's just a lot of stuff that does not work here. Far From Home, it just didn't feel like a Spider-Man movie, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, or I don't want to sound like the hater of Tom Holland, because I think Tom Holland's a great Spider-Man, and he was fantastic in Homecoming. It's just this movie, it's Tony Stark, Tony Stark, Tony Stark, Tony Stark, Tony Stark, Tony Stark. Did you know Tony Stark? Tony Stark, Edith glasses. Tony Stark villain. He's mad at Tony Stark. Tony Stark. It's just so, and then we have Happy there as well. It's very Iron Man Jr. And of course, they have that moment, oh, Peter messes up the song, see, he's not Tony Stark. He thinks it's Led Zeppelin, but it's really AC/DC. But, it's still playing AC/DC in an Iron Man jet while he's building a suit for himself for the third act with Happy. And so I see what they're trying to do. It didn't work for me. And Mysterio, Jake Gyllenhaal, gave a great performance. Mysterio as a character, though, was one of the weaker Marvel villains in the franchise. Of course, we've had worse, but Spider-Man Far From Home did not click emotionally the way I wanted it to, like Homecoming did, and I just don't like what they did with Tony Stark, particularly after they killed him, and the way that they approached that is just I don't like it at all. Well, I like the movie, of course. I think it's entertaining, but it has its problems. Coming in at number 20 is Thor. This movie is I hate it. I love the idea of taking a god, bringing him down to Earth, but once you're introduced to Asgard for the first time, you almost want to explore it, and then you spend that time on Earth. But the ideas and character development that Thor goes through, he can never go through on Asgard if it wasn't for Earth. So it's like you can get what you can take. You could give, like, if he was on Asgard the whole time, I would not care about his character as much, and I'd probably just find him really dislikable, because you're meant to not really like Thor at the beginning of the movie, but by the time he goes through some of the best character development in the whole MCU. I don't think I like Jane Foster's character. I've come to like Kat Dennings' character, and the whole cast I think does a great job. Of course, there's Anthony Hopkins as Odin, and that's the introduction to Loki with Tom Hiddleston. And I think there's good enough performances here to introduce the Thor character. There's good enough action for this movie to be passable. Of course, it has its problems, but the movie's biggest pros are almost from the root of the problems that I have with it. So like I said, it's love-hate. I like what the movie brought to the table. It's very original for what the rest of the MCU feels like. And yeah, it's an enjoyable movie. It has some pretty good fish out of water comedy. And yeah, that's the one. Coming in at number 19 is Black Widow. This is an enjoyable Marvel movie. It's enjoyable. It has its Marvel problems, the clunky third act, the hit or miss CG. The first time I watched this movie, I was like, this CG isn't that bad. And I watched it in the Dolby Cinema Theater. Then I watched it at home on Disney Plus. And then I was like, well, I guess it was kind of bad. I don't know why I noticed it on my TV more than I did a 4K projector, but that's that. But Taskmaster, a lot of people complaining about him. I don't think he was that terrible, because I'm not gonna spoil anything, but I'll just say this: the real villain of the movie is terrible. He delivers the worst line of dialogue in the whole entire MCU. There's a lot of Marvel-placed comedy when things get too deep. It didn't necessarily bother me here as much as it did some other movies, but this movie definitely does have that. The biggest thing I do like about this movie is it goes for a darker tone, particularly in the opening credits. The opening 20 minutes is probably the highlight of the movie for me. And there's some great action sequences in here. It's great Marvel action. When it comes to me being an action buff, the movie's just passable when it comes to choreography and stuff like that. But I think for Marvel, it's decent action for Marvel. Of course, there's the score in this one is decent here. Yeah. I'm a big score guy, so I think this was an above average score for the MCU. Scarlett Johansson did a good job. Florence Pugh was great. David Harbour was great. And it has those Marvel problems that it's almost like a Marvel movie. Let's take the problems of a Marvel movie, put it in one. But can't talk. What puts this movie above some others is it goes for that darker tone, which I really appreciate. Coming in at number 18 is Ant-Man. At first, I didn't care for this movie either, but it's grown on me quite a bit. I really like the introduction to Paul Rudd as Ant-Man. He really sells it as Ant-Man. And what really sells this movie for me is the relationship with his daughter and how nice that is. I really enjoy that dynamic. And there's some really creative action here. Would it have been better if Edgar Wright directed? I think it would have been a million times better if Edgar Wright directed. I feel like Peyton Reed is very much an extension of Marvel. There's some directors where it translates to Kevin Feige, I think. Like Black Widow, that director translates to Kevin Feige. Same with Captain Marvel. A lot of those movies don't necessarily have the feel as some of the director movies in this movie. I can't talk today, but Ant-Man, it has the bland, bald villain that's bad because he's bad, and yeah, of course there's the introduction to Michael Douglas and Evangeline Lilly, and their characters are good in this movie. I like the heist feel, and it's a good Marvel movie. It really is, and I don't want to seem like I'm giving it I don't feel like I'm giving this movie enough credit, because it does have a lot of fun ant sequences. I don't even know how to call them. It has just great ideas and here and there, but like it would have been better if Edgar Wright directed. That's another thing that kind of has me with this movie, is that if Edgar Wright directed it. But another star of this movie I forgot to point out is Michael Pena. He does a great job in this movie, and he really does. He almost carries it for me, to be honest. But I think there's a lot of good themes here with Scott and his daughter. There's some original ideas, and yes, it has some of those Marvel tropes that I don't care for, but it's still a fun Marvel movie. Coming in at number 17 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This movie is almost a kind of a clunky mess, but it has a very strong emotional core to it. James Gunn always succeeds at that. I'm curious how it's going to apply to the Suicide Squad in this August. But Guardians of the Galaxy 2 has one of the strongest emotional cores in the whole MCU, with Yondu and his death at the end, and the whole themes with, fathers and all that. What happens with Rocket in this movie, is all that is just so good. It really does elevate the movie that much for me. Ego, he is another Marvel villain, but yet he really does well fit into the theme of the parenting and fatherhood and all that. And so Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, it's a little choppy throughout the whole entire movie. It has some fun action, and of course it has another fantastic soundtrack. It brings enough style and flair to the MCU to where I would say it's good. I think I'm a little nice to this movie, to be honest, but it's a very watchable movie. It is clunky, but it's not really clunky unless if you're looking for it. And so, yeah, the only reason why I would say I would use it as a negative is if it affected the way I saw the movie, like in how the third act of Black Widow did. But the multiple storylines in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, I think it did a good enough job separating them and feeling natural to the story progression. Coming in at number 16 is Iron Man 3. This movie has jumped quite a bit on my list just because the action in this movie is really fun. I really like the style that this movie has, because I'm almost tired of the Marvel movies feeling the same thing over and over again. And yes, this movie, a lot of people don't like the Mandarin twist. I really don't care. I never was into the Iron Man comics, so whatever. He was a threatening presence throughout the first two acts, and once they do that reveal at the end, it does become a little underwhelming when it comes to the real Mandarin. Well, we're gonna get it, the real Mandarin in Shang-Chi. But yeah, Iron Man 3, I love the suits in this movie. I love the idea of, Stark blowing up his suits, and trying to put that aside. But almost, it kind of detracts a little bit because of, the rest of the MCU. He's doing more Iron Man stuff. But as a solo Shane Black Iron Man movie, it's really quite a bit of fun. Coming in at number 15 is Falcon and the Winter Soldier. If this show, I really enjoyed. I think episode 4 is some of the best MCU content we have ever had. And seriously, and if it wasn't for the last episode, this would be at maybe number 10-ish. But that last episode was very rushed and very, very much visuals over choreography, action sequences. And I didn't like the last episode that much. Episode 4, 5, and 3 were all great. Episodes 1 and 2 were decent, but 4, 5, and 3 were the peak of the series. And it was just, Zemo, forgot to mention this guy. Zemo was quite the shining light in in this show, and I forgot to mention what episodes are Zemo in. 3, 4, and 5. So I don't know. Maybe he's the only reason why I really enjoyed the middle episodes of the show. But another thing I didn't like about it is just I thought the Flag Smashers were extremely weak in this movie. I need to stop talking movies. In this show, the Flag Smashers are very underdeveloped. And what really irritates me is because what detracts it a lot for this show is you have a 6-hour runtime, and what do we know about the main Flag Smasher? She had this girl that she cared about that died, and she's upset about systems and governments and wants things before they were at the blip. It just feels so... I really don't care. And I know that they had to cut some stuff out because of COVID, and maybe because I heard that they were trying to do the storyline with the Flag Smashers, were trying to release a pandemic on the world where half the population would die. And I really felt like they should have kept that in, mostly because they could just put a disclaimer in front of the show, because when they wrote the script, started the idea for the show, they had no idea about COVID-19. So it's just so, no, I don't want to say politics. The world and everything that's going on really affected this show, I think, and I feel bad for that way, because I feel like it would have been a lot better. But I think they salvaged enough for this to be actually a pretty fun Marvel show, minus the last episode. To be honest with you, I like every episode except for the last one. That's the only one that really detracts it a lot. But yeah, coming in at number 14 is Avengers: Age of Ultron. I've always had quite a soft spot for this movie. Yes, it does a lot of exposition and setting up, but you almost expect that out of an Avengers movie, because it's building up to Infinity War. I expected that. Ultron was not exactly what I expected. I even remember in 2015, I was like, "This is Ultron," but yet I kind of enjoyed it. I love James Spader, and I think he did a decent job in this movie. Even though Joss Whedon's a bit of a jerk, I really do like his style and directions of the Avengers movies, for sure. Coming in at number 13 is Black Panther. This movie would be top tier if the CGI was better, but the CGI is very distracting to me in this movie, and that's why it's at the spot that it is. And well, it's still a good. Black Panther's great. I'm not gonna lie, but there's a lot of things about this movie where I'm like, it could have been top tier, but you almost got it, but not really. Eric Killmonger is the highlight of Black Panther for me. Chadwick Boseman is great as well, but Michael B. Jordan as Eric Killmonger just absolutely stole the show. So did Andy Serkis. I've always really enjoyed Andy Serkis in this movie, and I feel like he never got enough credit for this movie. But yeah, the themes, very Lion King-like messages and all that, and Black Panther had quite the message that I think the world needed in the last year or so, because I remember right in the midst of the pandemic, the election going on, I just kept thinking about this one Chadwick Boseman quote that he said in the post-credit scene, where he's saying, "More connects us. We need to all act like we were like one tribe." And I think that's a great message, and it really does explore that message, and it really does, it's a family drama at the same time. It is quite the heavy movie, and I really do appreciate that quite a bit. And yeah, coming into number 12 is Doctor Strange. Benedict Cumberbatch is the perfect Doctor Strange. I cannot imagine anyone else as him. The creative eye for this movie looks great. The visual effects are good, and the only thing that kind of distracts it is that even though the movie is so original with its visuals, it still feels very Marvel-ish. It never necessarily feels like, oh, this is Doctor Strange's movie. And of course I shouldn't say that, because there is a lot of cool visuals here that are quite original. It's just that it almost went through that Marvel filter where I felt like it distracted it a little bit. And this probably sounds like really stupid coming out loud, and I know what I'm thinking, but it's not translating as well as I'm saying it. But yeah, this might be one of the worst Marvel villains in this movie. I even forget his name. The guy with the eyes. He just was a little bit of a mess of a villain. Dormammu, I thought that what they did with him at the end was really cool. I've always really appreciated that. And yeah, coming in at number 11 is WandaVision. WandaVision was so original, and I've always appreciated the original take that they wanted to do. Of course, you have each episode is like its own episode of a TV show, and it's something new, creative, and original for the MCU, where it felt like a lot of stuff has been tasting the same lately. WandaVision was a really good palate cleanser for what we were about to get with like Falcon the Winter Soldier and Loki, because even though a lot of people were disappointed with the last episode, that was another thing that was affected by COVID. They had to reshoot the whole entire ending, so I'm sure Mystivo showed up like everyone thought he was. Sorry, like I said, I'm sweating because it's really warm out here, but everyone was upset about Mystivo, and he would have showed up if COVID never happened. And so I don't want to detract it too much. And I never really followed the theories for the shows after this, and it really did elevate Loki quite a bit for me. Well, Loki's theories came true, but what I'm saying. WandaVision, Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen are both great in it. It has a lot of cool visuals. course, the idea with the hex and all that, just love it. And of course, it sets up something that'll be quite interesting in the future. Coming in at number 10 is Avengers: Infinity War. I've always thought this was the most good Marvel. I don't even know what I'm saying, but it's a very Marvel movie, and it has the typical MCU jokes there that break the tension. That's probably my biggest flaw with it. But besides that, it's a very entertaining movie with Thanos is he's the best Marvel villain. You spend a lot of time with him. They balance all these storylines so perfectly with all these characters that you've come to know and love. And it's just so cool to see all these characters that you've seen throughout the MCU interact. And all that is just, all the interaction that they have there is great. The visual effects in this movie are awesome. I'm so happy that this movie looks as good as it does. It's really a fun Marvel movie that does what it needs to do and gets straight to the point. And even though it's 2 hours and 40 minutes, it had an impressionable villain. It never had a dull moment. Every character got a moment, and it's just a really fun Marvel movie. Coming in at number 9 is Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok is probably the most fun I've ever had watching a Marvel movie. Not to say that it has this problem. Of course, everyone has the problem of the jokes can be a little too much at moments, and which has me a little bit concerned for Thor Love and Thunder because Taika has said himself that it's even funnier than Ragnarok. So I just hope it's not a laughing throughout and then the emotion of the center story is lost like they almost did with Ragnarok. But I'll say, the movie is funny. And the jokes land, and there's so many jokes in here that are still repeated to this day in 2021. And this movie was released in 2017. So this movie definitely did leave a lasting impression for the MCU and for the fans, me included. I particularly like Hela quite a bit in this movie. I think she's one of the better Marvel villains out there. Yes, she is over the top, but I like her that way. And coming in at number 8 is Avengers Endgame. Avengers Endgame, it was everything I wanted, but it still has its small problems too. It's a lot of comedy that breaks deep moments. And I felt like, if we're going to have a big end to the franchise, it needs to have big moments and it needs to let them resonate. So, when Endgame, is trying to make PTSD jokes about Thor, I'm like, I don't necessarily care as much because the Marvel's trying to lighten the tension. So it's stuff like that with Endgame that kind of bugs me. But besides that, the last hour of this movie is absolutely perfect. Of course, it could have been a little less dull looking and matte looking on the screen, but it did everything I wanted from a conclusion for my characters in the MCU, the characters that I grew up with: Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, and I really do enjoy Endgame quite a bit. It's extremely rewatchable for a 3-hour movie, and I really do have quite a bit of fun, and it has some of the best moments in the whole MCU. Coming in at number 7 is Guardians of the Galaxy. It's the fantastic introduction to these characters that we all know and love today. Of course, we have Chris Pratt as Star-Lord, Zoe something as Gamora, Vin Diesel as Groot, and yet, even though Vin Diesel still somehow manages to make the movie about family when he says, "We are Groot," and that there's so many moments in this movie that are still called back to today in 2021, and this movie was released in 2014. I did a poll for Marvel fans to see what's their favorite Marvel movie. This one came into first place. I'm not kidding. Guardians of the Galaxy beat Infinity War and Endgame. It surprised the crap out of me. But Guardians of the Galaxy, it does have a weaker villain, but like I said about James Gunn's movies, it really has that strong emotional core. I think even stronger than the first one. It has probably one of my top 3 moments in the whole MCU, where they all come together to share the power of the Power Stone to defeat the bad guy, which means themes about family all comes together. The whole storyline, Peter's mother tragically but dying in the first scene, really was a great hook for these characters, and all of it. Guardians of the Galaxy is probably a Marvel classic. Coming in at number 6 is probably a movie I have very, very high for most people, and that is Spider-Man: Homecoming. What I enjoy most about this movie, it's extremely rewatchable, and the comedy that Marvel pulls fits the tone of the character. So, any comedy, it never feels like Marvel comedy. It feels like Spider-Man comedy. So all that really, really does work with me. Ned, I thought was great, played by Jacob. I can't remember his last name. Of course, we introduced, Zendaya as MJ. Tom Holland, I thought, was a great Spider-Man in this movie. And if it was for just this movie, I would say that Holland is the best Spider-Man we've had. But with Far From Home, it kind of changed that for me. But the Spider-Man situations, like the relatable high school situations that they put him in, all really work. And it has that, a strong, I don't want to say emotional, but a strong personal feel that it has. Of course, you have Tony Stark in this movie, but it never feels Iron Man Jr. And they really have that. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is when, towards the end, where Tony Stark takes the suit away from him, and the building falls from him, and he's telling himself to get up because he's Spider-Man. He doesn't need a Tony Stark suit to get him out of a situation. So all that, what they did with that is just fantastic, and Homecoming is really up there with the MCU. It has my favorite twist in the whole MCU with Michael Keaton being Liz's dad. It's very Spider-Man, and that's what I like about it. Coming in at number 5 is Loki. Yeah, I have Loki as my number 5. I really enjoy the show that much. Of course, it has some things that bother me, like the green screen's very obvious at points. The character leap from Loki in 2012 to becoming the Loki that we get by the end of the show is a little bit of a stretch, but besides that, the show, just perfectly captures the Loki that we got in 2017. And Tom Hiddleston is great as ever as Loki. It introduces Sylvie, which is one of my new favorite characters of the show. Owen Wilson is great. It has a great cast. Of course, the ending, is bonkers, and I can't wait for season 2. And by the way, since we're getting season 2, I'm not going to be like, oh, Loki season 1 is number blah, and then Loki season 2 is number blah. So it's all going to be considered one. So let's say Loki season since just Loki season 1, it's at number 5, and let's say I don't like season 2 at all, and it's at number 15. So I'm just warning you guys that every single season is going to be considered as one for Loki. But the concepts and the high concepts, I'm not talking right, the concepts and the high concepts, but the concepts for this show are just so out there, and it just goes right into it, explains it in a possible way for the average audience to understand, and it really just goes there and explores all the corners that I wanted to be explored for this show. It really does a great job, the TVA and what they do with the characters there. It's just all great. Coming in at number 4 is Iron Man. Iron Man is the one that started it all. It has my favorite opening scene in the MCU. It's just great. It really does have the strong character build-ups. Robert Downey Jr. kills it as Iron Man here. There's just so many classic moments here. Yes, the villain here is particularly weak, but remember, it's the first Marvel movie. It's gonna have mistakes like that, and yes, it is biased because it's the first one, but I have a lot of respect for it. I had tons of fun watching it. It has some of my favorite jokes and one-liners in the whole MCU, and it really does have that distinct Iron Man style that is what made me basically fall in love with this series as a whole. It's just really a perfect intro to Iron Man. It really is. Coming in at number 3 is The Avengers. The Avengers is one of the first Marvel movies I saw in theaters. I think it's the second one I saw in theaters. And I remember it's just so much nostalgia for this movie. Is it perfect? No. Yes, there are problems with it that really should be a little bit lower on this list. But I'm just going to say it. I'm biased because I'm a person and I have my own ranking. And this is my ranking. Yes, there are better movies on this list, but I'm putting it here just because I have such a fun time watching it. Loki here is some of the best he's ever been, minus in the Loki show. Everything that they do, I think they do really well. Every single Avenger gets at least a moment. It has one of the best this might be the best third act in the whole MCU. Well, mine is my number 1. This is my second favorite third act in the whole MCU. It brings together so many characters in a way that I just love. It's incredibly rewatchable. I probably rewatch this movie about 2 or 3 times a year, and I just love it that much. Coming in at number 2 is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. This movie it's everything. It really is. It has the perfect choreography. Every single scene and punch, it just hits hard in this movie. For 2014 was a great year for Marvel, but This movie made me like Steve Rogers. It really did explore all the corners of what I wanted for a spy movie. This is the movie that made us want a Black Widow movie. It's the movie that it's just so well done. The action sequences, I cannot express enough how good they are. Henry Jackman makes an amazing score for the Captain America, and they applied in Civil War and in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But yeah, Captain America the Winter Soldier is just spy perfection when it comes to the MCU. Coming in at number 1 is Captain America Civil War. It's my favorite. Will it always be my favorite? I don't know. I'm thinking so. But it just has that moral dilemma that is so natural to the MCU, and it split up the characters. It has lasting impacts for the future of the series. You could see where each character is coming from, and so that's why it's tragic to see these characters fight. And I remember walking out of this movie for the first time, and people thought I didn't like it just because how stunned I was. And I am almost still stunned to this day that this movie went to the places that it did. There's a lot of people say, oh, they were friends again because, Steve gave Iron Man a phone, but, they didn't come together because there was still tension in Infinity War. So, and that's the reason why they lost. If it wasn't for Civil War, we wouldn't have Endgame. But Zemo is my an introduction to one of my favorite villains in the MCU. It's just, also an introduction to Spider-Man and Black Panther. They introduce all these new ideas and concepts that for the rest of the MCU to explore, but it never feels overstuffed, and they just did a fantastic job with that. Everything is just, they get the politics in the movie. There's a political discussion between the Avengers. You understand where each character comes from, and it's just all amazing. I love Civil War. And yeah, that is... I know I've been talking weird throughout this whole entire video. I am warm. I've been trying to get this video done. I have no idea how many takes this has taken, but I'm glad it's done. And that's my ranking. You could also check it out on Letterboxd, which it's also on there. But yeah, anyways, comment down below. What is your ranking? I know it's quite a bit to rank 27 things in the comments, but if you want to, go ahead. I'm curious. So yeah, anyways, like, share, subscribe, and stuff like that, and adios.